Greetings, best of trekkers! When I do polls to choose topics, which watch for more polls soon, whatever comes in second place gets added to the next poll. The topic of caves came in second 3 polls in a row. So, for all of you that love the foam contours of Paramount's standing cave set, that's what we're talking about on this edition of...
Yeah, it's the best 5 worst 5, know what I mean? Yeah, it's the best 5 worst 5 treks ever seen.
After the ubiquitous Planet Hell set that was used nearly weekly in TOS and fairly often in early TNG, the cave set probably does the second most amount of heavy lifting in the background department. This ranking isn't ranking entire episodes as a whole, but for how interesting what happens in the caves themselves are. As is tradition, we're starting with the 5th worst. Cave Filler. While Chain of Command Part 2 is easily one of Trek's best overall episodes for the interactions between 2 master actors, the first part spends about a third of its runtime training for or wandering through caves, all to culminate in an empty room. And for me personally, it feels like they just couldn't write any more people for Jellicoe to infuriate into the script. While we need this setup to get to the amazing part 2, I think it could have been cut down to much less of the runtime. I'm just bored watching 3 main characters meander through caves for no payoff. Get up, get down, get number 4. Everybody walk the dinosaur. While there's a very classic Trek plot going on in Voyager's parturition of Tom Paris and Neelix going from jealous lovers to friends by the end, my suspension of disbelief with the dinosaur puppet goes right out the window. The 2 men and a baby thing as a whole just doesn't hold my attention, and as much as I've always disagreed with Gene Roddenberry's rule of no interpersonal conflict in Star Trek, this feels like it's goofy in another direction. I'm not sure there's been another conflict between main characters in Trek that gets to this point, where it takes a life-and-death situation to get the 2 to be amicable to each other by the end. Number 3. Sucks to your ass, Mar, Terran. If you ever wondered what would have happened to the children in The Lord of the Flies had they remained stuck on the island, look no further than Enterprise's Terra Nova. Earth's first attempt at a deep space colony went horribly wrong when an asteroid strike heavily irradiated the planet. Decades later, Enterprise is the first Earthship that wouldn't take nearly 10 years to get there, and what they find are the children that were the only ones to survive, and their offspring who speak in broken English. This should feel like a classic Trek episode, and one of many looks at humanity through a sci-fi lens, but it comes off as super cheesy. Number 2. Caves. Because. In another Enterprise waste of film stock, the episode The Breach contains a B-plot where Enterprise is tasked with extracting a group of Denobulan scientists from deep in a series of caves on a politically shaky planet that has demanded all off-worlders leave within a few days. The only way to inform them, though, is to literally take a deep dive into dangerous caves. While Travis Mayweather is supposedly an avid climber, he's the one that ends up with a broken leg along the way, where he's left on a ledge in the dark by himself till Trip and Reed can reach the Denobulans and get him on the way back out. Once they get there, the scientists just wave off the danger and tell them to leave despite the dangers they faced getting there. The caving itself felt highly like filler, similar to Chain of Command, but at least that episode did set up something worthwhile to watch. Coming to the end of this journey only to be rebuffed by the Denobulans, whose lives they're trying to save, just seems like a slap in the face. At least the A-plot of Phlox dealing with racism makes the episode itself watchable. And the worst cave episode at number 1? Justice for Joe. Much like Terra Nova, the Voyager episode Friendship 1 revolves around people living in caves due to an ecological disaster, but in this scenario, it was the race living on this planet that did it to themselves with a little help from humanity. Apparently a probe launched in the era of only Warp 1 travel somehow made it to the other side of the galaxy and culturally contaminated a world. It taught these people how to manufacture antimatter, and using it as a power source didn't go so well. It caused a fallout nuclear winter effect that has forced the final generations of survivors into caves. When Voyager goes on their first Starfleet mission in 7 years to recover the probe, these people are openly hostile and take the away team hostage. What earns this cave episode the distinction of worst in category is the egregious death of Joe Carey, a minor reoccurring character that was once in contention for Voyager's chief engineer, but hadn't been seen in a present episode for multiple seasons, only being brought back a few episodes before Voyager makes it home to be unceremoniously unalived. It joins Trip Tucker's meeting with the Great Koala in Enterprise's final episode, and Echab's last request as the most egregious death of a character in the franchise, and is easily the worst cave episode in all of Trek. Before we start spelunking in the best Trek caves, if you're enjoying the content, please consider a like and subscribe. At fifth best, A Voice from the Darkness. While we don't get a lot of screen time in the actual cave of DS9's The Sound of Her Voice, it's one of the most heartbreaking cave episodes in the series. The war-weary crew of the Defiant put their comfort aside to try and make a rescue possible of a Starfleet captain before she succumbs to CO2 poisoning. The voice in the dark helps many of the crew work through their issues in their own lives, and they do everything possible to make it to her in time. In a Twilight Zone-level twist in the end, she's been dead for years, and the ghost they were speaking to had to do with a field that keeps the planet she was on stuck out of sync with the rest of the galaxy. By the end, you feel a real sense of loss for a character whose face you never saw. It also doubles as foreshadowing of Jadzia's upcoming unaliving event, but for a mostly bottle episode with a cave, it sure pulls on your heartstrings. Number 4. Search for the Grail. In a very Indiana Jones moment, Jonathan Archer goes on a search for Vulcan's most important artifact during Enterprise's three-parter, The Forge, Awakening, and Kirshara. Though it's often described, including by me, as the Vulcan Grail, it's more analogous to finding an original, unadulterated version of the Bible that tells the Vulcan people exactly what logic demanded by their original version of a messiah, Serac. Just so happens Johnny has a leg up by accidentally having Serac's consciousness within him. It feels fresh and unlike any other cave set we've seen previously. Though at the 7-minute mark, check out how many right turns Archer makes in Kirshara as they're trying to exit the cave system. Number 3. Cave of Wonders. Carol Marcus and Son achieved their first test of the Genesis device in an underground cave that nearly became their tomb in the Wrath of Khan. Not only is the cave itself a testament to the scientific efforts of Doctors Marcus, but also of the Starfleet Corps of Engineers dedicated to tunneling it out. As the place where Captain Terrell was self-unalived and nearly took Chekhov with him, these walls have seen some things. In a setting of awe in creation, Kirk reveals his secret of how he became the only cadet to ever beat the Kobayashi Maru. This is both one of the most interesting caves in Trek, and it's most beautiful. Number 2. Quality Time. One of my favorite episodes of the original Twilight Zone is 5 characters in search of an exit. The entire thing takes place in one confined space, and with the right actors and script, sometimes that's all you need. In the case of DS9's Waltz, it only takes the Cisco and Gul Dukat in a cave on an inhospitable planet to make a great hour of television. As Dukat descends deeper into madness, Ben actively eggs him on and challenges his fallacies. It rivals Chain of Command for the best scenes between 2 adversaries in a confined space across the franchise. It's the moment that you truly realize that Dukat isn't just a classic Klingon frenemy type, but an active psychopath with a nefarious agenda similar to Khan. One thing's for sure, he'll never get that statue on Bajor. An honorable mention for TOS's Devil in the Dark, one of a very few instances in Trek of meeting a non-humanoid race, and all while it has a few problems that keep it just out of the top 5, it has a great Trek message of understanding species that are very different. And the best cave episode in Trek at number 1, Story Time. The aptly named Lower Decks episode, Caves, brings us 4 mini-stories told about our main characters, about previous times they were stuck in caves in their Starfleet career. The stories are both funny and super interesting. They're also generally about building camaraderie between the people stuck within them, and that's just a beautiful classic Trek message. I think fleshing out conspiracy proofer Levy and tying in the idea he just gets his ideas from 24th century message boards to feel special is a great way to both expand a character and touch on a major problem facing society today. For me, I don't know that this episode of the same name will ever be displaced as the GOAT of cave episodes. What's your favorite cave episode?